I'm Jade of Jaded Reader, and today I'm going to be going over books that I have recently read. So this recently reads video is going to have a bit of a different structure to it, not because it's a recently read versus a wrap-up, but because there are some books I'm going to be skipping, or some of the books I'll be talking about on this list I'll be going over in broad strokes, because I have vlogs dedicated or heavily featuring these books, and they've had their time, and it'll just be a brief overview. The first book I really want to talk about, and I've actually been wanting to talk about for a while, is Daughters of Henri by Rennie K. Amayo. This is a story following two different girls and their time during, I would say, an unrest in their kingdom. One girl lives in a village, the other one lives in the royal palace, but both of them have in some way been abandoned or adopted, and ultimately this book ended up being a beautifully written Nigerian fantasy following these two women as they come into their own and possibly come into some powers. Now, this is a book where if you look up the synopsis, you'll get major spoilers, and I was spoiled for what I feel like was some of the main reveal, like what this was building up to the entire time, and I feel like if I had not known the synopsis for this book, it would have had even more impact, and I possibly would have given it a higher rating. But hypotheticals aside, I really enjoyed this book. It was beautifully written, and I loved the interactions between the different characters, as well as how much character development they had by the end. It was a slower paced book, but because it was so beautifully written, it didn't bother me much, except for when it came to the ending. I felt like the ending was a bit rushed and took a little too long to get there. So if the ending had been as fantastic as how well written the beginning and middle was, I do think I'd be looking at this book differently. It ended up being a very solid, very secure 4-star read for me, and I think it set you up really well for the sequel. Next up on my list is possibly one of my favorites that I've read in a while, and I cannot wait to own a physical copy of it. I listened to this on audiobook, and it is Slay by Brittany Morris. Slay follows our main character, Kira, who is an honor student. She is top of her class. She's incredibly intelligent. She has thoughts and opinions of her own. However, she's unsure of how to represent them in the real world and how to speak up for herself when it comes to her friends, as she goes to a predominantly white school, and she is struggling with the adversities that come with that in being an African-American student with a very small student body of Black individuals. Kira is pretty much just like the most badass character. What she ends up doing with all these feelings is developing her own video game called Slay. It's a VR interactive game, and this video game is amazing. Kira is amazing. The development and discussions that are happening in this book are so important. There's just nothing wrong with it, and I think everyone should be reading it. There were hard-hitting moments. There were moments that made me laugh. I felt like I was learning and growing from the discussions that were being had in this book, and I think that everyone could probably benefit from reading it. So I, of course, gave Slay a 5 out of 5 stars because it is a 5 out of 5 star book. I don't know what else I could possibly tell you. I'm also going to be putting a content warning on this book for racism and white supremacy. This book does an amazing job of challenging those, but if they are triggering or content you'd like to stay away from, then I would keep that in mind. My next book I would love to talk about is Elantris. Elantris was my first Brandon Sanderson book, and it blew me away, especially to find out this is one of his least popular works and one of his first, if not his first work that he got published. Knowing that this book was the worst of his, I am so excited to get into his series. I am, of course, a co-host in the Cosmere Long Readathon hosted by Rachael Marie, so I get to read all of these books, and I am super psyched. Elantris is a standalone novel that is, I would say, mostly fantasy, but if you look at his broader world, it becomes a sci-fi fantasy. Just looking at this book alone, it registered as fantasy for me and follows 3 different perspectives, which is Serene coming to the kingdom of Kay. She is from a neighboring kingdom, and she is coming to go marry Prince Raiden. Raiden is a character who just recently died, so Serene is adopted into this court and is following their cultures, and there's a lot of political intrigue that's going on in this book, but Serene is in the midst of it. You also have Prathan. Prathan is a character who's coming to this kingdom as well, but he is coming to convert it to his religion. He has with him a few acolytes. Sure, let's go with acolytes. And he's trying to convert this kingdom so that it is not overtaken by his religious leader. Then you have Raiden, the prince who died, and his role to play in this is pretty integral to the entire plot, which has to do with the kingdom of Elantris. Elantris is a fallen kingdom that was once filled with godlike immortal beings, but at some point something happened and the kingdom is now rotted to its core, allowing Hrathen and his people to take over the larger country that Elantris was a part of. I don't know how so much happened in one book. This is why I love standalones so much. When it's done right, it is so satisfying to read. And this book was indeed satisfying. All the way through, there was so much build-up, so much character development. You are able to slowly piece this world together. By the end of it, the payoff was out of this world amazing, and it was exactly what I needed. I ended up giving Elantris a 5 out of 5 stars. If you would like to join us for the rest of Cosmere-Along, you're more than welcome to catch up with Elantris, and we are now starting on the Mistborn series, so come join us. If you're not a Brandon Sanderson fan, you will be by the end of Elantris, and then you'll want to jump right in with us with Mistborn. Or you can just read Mistborn, that's fine, but this book was really great. The next books I'm going to talk about will definitely be an abridged review, as I do have dedicated vlogs for them. So the first book I'd like to talk about in my abridged review is Crescent City. I know you're thinking, wait, are you serious? You're not going to give a review on Crescent City? An entire 37-minute video is dedicated to Crescent City, so I will have that linked up above, or if you're on a TV and I just pointed at nothing, then I'll have it linked down below, or you can just find it on your own. I don't know how TV people do it. But yes, Crescent City was fantastic. It was exactly what I needed in the moment, and I had so many different emotions throughout that I ended up giving the book 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not going to give a synopsis on Crescent City because if you read the synopsis, it'll ruin so much impact in the story. The same way I was talking about The Daughters of Henry is how I feel about Crescent City. If I had known one of the plot points in this book, I don't think I would have been hooked as fast, but instead I was hooked on chapter 5, and it was pretty much just a whirlwind of emotions from there on. I cried, I laughed, I felt lust, I did all of the Sarah J. Maas things, and I also found out that it's actually called House of Earth and Blood. That's a mouthful. It just doesn't roll off the tongue, and so Crescent City. I'm definitely not a huge Sarah J. Maas fan. It's not her personally, but this worked for me just fine. And oh wait, okay, I've had a digital copy held up in my hands this entire time, but I do own the physical copy, so here we are. Sorry, that's probably confusing, but I do own the physical copy of this. I just got on a roll with all my digital copies, so 5 out of 5 stars to Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. My next book I'm going to talk about, I can't hold up physically because I have it and I'm aware that I have it, and that is The Wolf in the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky. And I do have a vlog that's pretty much dedicated to this, as well as my first week or so in self-isolation. So this book came at a really intense time for me and was a really intense book all on its own. I will have a list of trigger warnings going down below because honestly I don't want to miss one, and they're all really important. This book follows the character Omat, who is training to be a shaman or religious leader of their tribe. In this, Omat has to realize exactly who they are, who they'd want to be, and that's going into a larger plot having to do with a fantastical version of Inuit myth and legend meeting a fantastical version of Norse myth and legend. So you have battling gods, battling tribes, battling cultures, and all of the different discussions that can go along with that. Honestly, ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars, but it is heavy and it is hard hitting, and you really want to be in a comfortable space to read it. If any of the content warnings below had applied to you, or you just maybe want to be in a good mood, because I wasn't negatively affected, but it brought me down deep into my mind, and it took a while to get back out of there. And I'll again have my vlog up above or down below, yada yada yada. The next book I'm going to talk about was my primary read for the Royal Weekender, part of the Bookie Trials hosted by Rachael Marie, and that is Mirage by Samaya Daoud. This was an excellent read for me. It is a Moroccan-inspired sci-fi fantasy novel that follows our main character Amani, who is growing up in a small town during a rebellion. Her kingdom was recently taken over, a lot of her culture has been erased, and you have these usurpers who end up abducting Amani and taking her to the capital, where she is told that she is now going to be the body double for the princess, who is incredibly hated, and Amani is pretty much enslaved to this cause. It has a lot of intensity behind it. I really ended up enjoying the character dynamics and character relationships that were built upon, and I just caution you to give this book a chance past its first few chapters. It grew on me exponentially, and by the time I got to the end, I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic, and I highly recommend it. Now, I have read some other books in the last few months books since my recent reads video, but they will be in an entire video of their own, so stay tuned for that. And until then, I'm done with this video, and I hope you're enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are, and until next time, bye! My cat's using the litter box right now. Finish up. She's just playing with it. Elantris was my first Brian Sanderson. Nope. My first Brandon? Is his name Brandon? Do people look at him and go, hello, Brandon? Brandon seems like a 4-year-old boy's name. That can't be right. Brandon Sanderson. Brian Sanderson? Why am I thinking he's a Brian? Because he's an adult? Oh, would you look at that? His name's actually Brandon. Okay. It was my first... Now there's a fly. What? Get out of here. Shoo. I have to get that fly. I can't live like this. Grows up in a rural village. Rural. Uh-oh. No, not another word. If I didn't say that already. Are you in here? I heard the door open, but nobody's talking. Ooh, that was creepy. Okay. Jordana Max. By Jordana Max Oh no, I'm not doing this again. Jordana Max Brodsky. Jordana Max. Where's that fly? Where are you? Oh, you think this is over? You'll move eventually. Come on, sucker. Try me.